So today I would like to make some halva. Now halva is one of these cool desserts that's traveled far and wide and adapted to what people have. There are tons and tons of versions of this spanning Africa, Europe, and Asia. It can be made from nuts or seeds or wheat, and there's even a carrot version actually. But today we're going to make some suji halva, which is an Indian version made with wheat or semolina. It's really easy to make, and it's definitely a unique dessert that will impress people if you've never had it before. So let's just jump straight into it. Now the first thing we need to do actually is make some clarified butter, or as it's known in India, ghee. To do this, we can start with regular butter, and we just need to separate out the milk solids from the actual butter itself. In the end, we only need about 50 grams of clarified butter, but I wanted to make some extra for some future use because it actually lasts quite a while. So I have 125 grams of regular butter here that we're going to turn into clarified butter. Now to do this, all we really need to do is just heat this on low to medium-low heat so that it slowly melts and the milk solids separate from the rest of the fat. Now you might be wondering what's the difference between clarified butter and regular butter. Well, the reason we're doing this is because if you heat the butter that you get from the grocery store as it is, the milk solids that are in there will burn very quickly, and that means that you can't really use butter at a high temperature. But if you separate out the milk solids, the clarified butter that you end up with can be heated up to a very high temperature and can be used to, like, for example, sear a steak or whatever else you want to do. So once the butter has melted, we can start to separate out the foam that surfaces to the top. Now, one recommendation I've seen is to use a fine sieve like this to grab up all the foam. It works relatively nice, but in the end I had to use a spoon to just get that last bit. Either way is fine, just make sure to grab as much of the foam and leave as much of the precious clarified butter behind as possible. Once you've gotten all the foam off the top, we can carefully pour the clarified butter into another container. And we have to make sure that we don't get any of the milk solids that have sunk to the bottom. Letting them cool in the pan for about a minute or two will help with this as well, because then they'll stick to the bottom of the pan and then you just can pour off the clarified butter. So it's relatively easy, and this is useful technique for other stuff as well. But from this 125 grams, I got a total of 85 grams of clarified butter, which is not too bad considering that we got rid of a lot of the milk solids. So now we have our clarified butter, we can actually begin on gathering the rest of our ingredients for our halva. So the first thing that we're going to need is semolina. For those who aren't aware, semolina is just a different variety of wheat that's also been ground to a different, coarser consistency than, for example, flour. If you've ever had, for example, cream of wheat, this is the similar stuff. This is also similar stuff that couscous is made out of. So now of the semolina, we're gonna need 150 grams, and I'll put all of the metric and imperial units in the description below. Because this is a dessert, we wanted to sweeten it up. I'm using 100 grams of sugar, but honestly, this was on the lower end of the sweetness. So if you want it to be more desserty, you can add 50 grams more, or even another 100 grams if you want it to be really sweet. To this sugar, we're gonna add about 400 milliliters of water, which is about 1 3/4 of a cup, and we're gonna boil this to make a syrup. To add a little bit more flavor, I'm also going to add some green cardamom pods. If you don't have these or you can't find them, don't worry. Now to give an interesting texture and flavor, I'm going to add some nuts. So here I'm using cashews, almonds, and actually a little bit of raisins as well. But this is totally up to you, and you should feel free to add whatever you want to this. And lastly, on the ingredients side, we need 50 milliliters of milk. And because it's traditional and I was feeling decadent, we can also add a few threads of saffron. Now this is completely optional, and I rarely cook with this stuff, so I just kind of wanted to give it a try here. In the end, it didn't make too much of a difference in the flavor, but if you have it laying around, this is a way to use it. Okay, so with all the ingredients ready, it's actually time to cook this. And this thing's gonna come together rather quickly. This is one of these recipes where gathering the ingredients is half the battle. So first off, we need to boil our sugar-water mixture into a syrup. To do this, just put it on high heat in the back, let it boil for a few minutes while we prepare the semolina. Now to prepare the semolina, we're just gonna start by toasting it a little bit. Now this is optional, but it will give you a nice nutty flavor to the final product that I think really is nice. To do this, just heat up a pan on medium heat and let it come up to temperature. And once it does, you can go ahead and add our semolina into the pan. Now to avoid it from scorching, you have to be very vigilant and stir it constantly for about 3 minutes. What you'll notice is that the color will slightly darken, and then it'll start to smell nice and toasty, and you get this nice warm fragrance. And at this point, we can add our clarified butter. So I'm adding 50 grams of clarified butter, making sure to stir in the clarified butter and coat the semolina. Next, we can add our nuts or our raisins, and just go ahead and mix these in together, and we're just gonna let this cook for about 1 minute, making sure to keep continuously stirring this. This will give a chance for the semolina to cook a little bit, as well as for the nuts to warm up and toast a little bit. So next we're gonna need to pour in our sugar syrup mixture. Now, try not to freak out like I did here. It definitely frightened me. It's gonna flare up and it's gonna start bubbling immediately. Also, maybe be a little careful not to freak out, because that's how accidents happen. This stuff definitely gave me a fright. But anyways, it should bubble up really quickly at first, but slowly add the sugar mixture in. And when it's done, you can also add in the milk. And so we're just gonna cook this for about 2 minutes and let the water and milk and everything come together. And you should notice that the texture will change from a wet, loose sand to more of a cohesive, sticky mixture. And this is exactly the point at which we're done. So from here, it's super simple. All you need to do is just put it in some sort of mold. I'm using a baking casserole dish that I have. I've also lined mine so that it's easier to pull out later. And I just smoothed out the bottom, and we're just gonna let this cool for about 20 minutes or so. And after it's cooled, we can pull it out, cut it up, and boom, we're done. This stuff is super easy to make, and it's definitely one of these recipes that's harder to get all the ingredients together. So once you do all that, I mean, it comes together in about 10 minutes. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please be sure to subscribe. It really motivates me to keep making these things. So thanks. All right, bye.